technical problems all of a sudden. This thing is weird. It worked this morning. It worked right there 2 seconds ago, and then it quit. So I got to do one thing real fast. Talk among yourselves. Turn the lights on. I need to see when people go to sleep. See if I got it right this time. I apologize for that. I think the screen's off. I think it's not my problem. But it's probably my problem anyway. You know, that causes difficulty when there's a screen not even on. So anyway, we just always start out really with a bang, because if you weren't aware, this is the last of our 11:30 services. Oh yeah, that's the title of the sermon. Just so you know, it's going to be really interesting. We're consolidating into one service to increase the excitement, build the community. We noticed how, I told you this before in case you're new, we got some awesomely cool people here. And when we put a bunch of us in the room together, it's really nice. And so we're going to have just one 10 o'clock service, and starting next week, December 1st, so we can really get that community cranked to another level. Just so you know what we're talking about, service will be at 10 on the next week, and I'm hoping every first Sunday, we're going to have food trucks after the service is over. So when you get done, you're done early enough that you don't have to just rush out of here to get on with your day. Come here at 10, 10:30. After the service is over, the coffee shop will be open. We'll have food trucks once a month where you can come out. If the weather's nice, let the kids go out and play and just hang out with each other, because there's a lot of really cool people here you don't know. And you can't meet them all if we're all just stuck in a room for an hour or however long Steve talks each week. So that starts next week at 10, and excited about it. We didn't tell the first service it was starting at 10, because I figure if they're always late. So they're the 9:30 service. They'll just be wandering in. And if you miss it next week, if you forget and show up at 11:30, you're just in time for the food truck. So it's a win. No matter what, you can say, "I'm sorry, I didn't set my clock," and just show up and eat and go. But so anyway, that's starting next week. We're kind of excited about that new movement as the church really focused on the community out there, but the community in here at the same time. And I'll talk a little bit more as we get moving. A couple of things we're doing in the community out there to be the people God wants us to be. So that's going on. Every year, sometime in the fall, I do a series on family. And I do that, I say this, because your all's families are screwed up. No, for families in our culture in general are screwed up. I tried one year to skip. I really did. I said, I'm going to take a year off from doing a family series. And like 2 months before that, suddenly everybody's calling me about how their families are doing that year, and it's not good. And I'm like, okay, I'll do it again. So every year we do a series, and I just thought, why don't we just start, we'll just put the rubber where the rubber meets the road, and start out with one basic concept. You're doing it wrong. It's not the stuff you think you're doing wrong. It's some other stuff you're doing wrong, and it's really hijacking your ability to have the kind of family. And by the way, if you're not married, the stuff we'll talk about, the principles, they'll apply to a single person. If you don't have kids or your kids are already grown, it'll apply to you too. This is real basic stuff on how to make life work. Because if your life's not working, your family's not going to work. Does that make sense? If your life in general is jacked up, well, you can just count on your family being jacked up. So I thought, let me show you a few pictures of some people who are doing it wrong. And we're going to use these as we go. Like this guy here. He's doing it wrong. There's something intrinsically wrong about him. And even over there's one girl who doesn't even have a plate. And all of them are trying to spin plates on sticks, which is just, you're doing it wrong, if that's the case. This family, they're doing it wrong. They are definitely doing it wrong. And of course, this guy, he is no doubt about it doing it wrong. And let me just make sure we're all on the same page. What's he doing wrong? He has a man bun, exactly. I want to make sure we understand what he's doing wrong primarily is the dude is some European guy, and he's got a man bun. And so that's what he's doing wrong. And we're actually going to take, each of these pictures is going to be, because I want you to remember what we talk about. So we're actually going to take each of those slides, and we're going to go back to each one, and we're going to look at what they're doing wrong. And then we're going to talk about how we tend to do the same things wrong they're doing, maybe just in a different level. So let's go back and look at this guy and these people. And when I started the concept, I said, I sent out about a month ago, I said I'm going to do a series on family, my annual series. What do you need me to talk about? Just I wanted to check and see what everybody was thinking. And I got a lot of people saying, Steve, can you tell us how to have balance as a family? How do I get my life in balance? And that immediately told me that a lot of you are doing it wrong for a very simple reason. There are three things you're probably doing wrong. And the first one is you're trying to achieve balance in the midst of chaos. You have bought a lie. And that lie is that balance is possible in this world. But can I tell you something? You're not going to like this. Balance is impossible. I'm going to help you out something. You're going to argue with me this entire sermon. In your minds, I'm going to bring up a point, and you're going to argue with me. You're going to every point, you're going to argue with me. I know it. I understand it. I am working with that in mind, that every point you're going to, and as soon as I say balance is impossible, you're going to say, no, it's not, because I've been trying to get balance in my life my entire life. I know it's got to be possible. How many times have you achieved balance for a meaningful period of time? When's the last time you spent a month with your life in balance? Just cruising through. Great month, man. It was all balanced, everything. Doesn't work. Why? Life's chaotic and weird. You think about some guy who's doing some sort of a balancing act, or some lady doing a balancing act. And let's take one to extreme, where here you got the woman who's standing on top of a rubber ball, right? She's standing on top of the rubber ball, and she's standing here, and she's juggling knives with plates on her head and everything else. What's the key to the success of this operation? The floor. Right? If there's not a stable surface at the very bottom, there is no such thing as a balancing act that works unless you provide some sort of a stable, balanced platform. Is your life stable? Does anything ever go wrong? Is there ever a week when nothing goes wrong and everything goes according to plan? The answer to that question is no. It never happens. Your life never stabilizes long enough for you to have balance. So if balance is impossible, what do I shoot for instead? Well, the biblical principle is to focus on your priorities, not your balance. Sit down and decide what's important. And by the way, when I say your priorities, I'm talking about your real priorities, not the daydream ones you make up. Because some of you, if I went and asked you your priorities, you would give me a beautiful list. You really would. You would do just such a one. I would leave with a tear. Because your priorities were artistic, they were wonderful. But you know, if I want to know your priorities, I'm not going to ask you. I'm going to check your schedule, and I'm going to check your bank statement. And some of you went, oh, crap, can he do that? Do pastors have some sort of a magical computer program that they can pull up or something on their phone where they can see how my schedule goes? They can see how I really spend my time and how I'm spending. No, I don't. But if I wanted to know your priorities, that's how I would find them out. Because you've got the priorities that you say, but your real priorities are the ones you live. Gandhi said it this way: action expresses your priorities. And a lot of you never spend any time thinking about your priorities, assessing your priorities, and you don't spend any time at all applying your priorities. Andy Stanley said it this way: we don't drift in good directions. We drift away from where we're supposed to be. And so if we're not assessing our priorities and actively working on our priorities, we go the wrong direction. We discipline and prioritize ourselves there. We don't drift in good directions. We discipline and prioritize ourselves there. If you want to get to the right priorities, you have to intentionally analyze them, think about them, apply them. Or as Jesus, who said everything better than anybody else. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Seek first his kingdom, his righteousness. Number one priority, start there. So get your priorities straight, and other things will work out better. Now, what we do instead of priorities is we focus on specifics and details in our daily life. And let me give you something for that. Communicate about priorities more than specifics. Because here's what's going to happen. If you have a normal human American life, especially if you have normal human American kids, is you start your day with a list of here's what's going to happen today. Anybody have that list when they get up in the morning? I have to do this, have to get the kids here, have to get me here, have to do this. Here's the 7 or maybe 75, depending on your day, things you got to get done today. What happens every day? Life. Right? Somewhere around steps 3 and, -1, something goes wrong every time. And if all I'm focused on is the specifics of what my day is, I'm at chaos. Immediately in chaos. Matter of fact, let me tell you how you can tell that you have a typically chaotic life. If I were going to check on it, if I could figure out how to check on it, I know exactly how to check to see how chaotic your life is and how actually overscheduled you are. I just need to pull up your text messages with your spouse. Right? Because you start out the day, and here's what's going to happen. Here is the thing. And around step 2, something goes off the rails, and what do you have to do? You start the massive thumb war with your spouse to discuss what should we do now? What do we ditch? How do I get this person here? I'm supposed to have one kid here at this time and one kid here at this time, and I got a meeting here, and you got this there, and and the whole day you are just wearing out your thumbs. You have to replace your phone once on a regular basis because your screen is worn out from all the pushing you're doing, talking to your spouse about what to do about the specifics about your day. But if you focus on the priorities, if you focus on your priorities, one thing that happens, the discussions are easier and more impactful than discussions about specifics. Because what do you argue about as a couple? The specifics. Right? Should we do this or this? Should we do this or this? What if this doesn't? And that's what the thumb thing is, right? Because this went bad, this went south. What should we do next? What other specific would she do? But the reality is, priority discussions lead to greater freedom and less stress. Because let's say, instead of having the list of my specifics I'm going to do today, my spouse and I have determined our priorities. And we know what's most important to us, and we know what's least important to us, and we communicate that to each other on a regular basis, and I'm on my list of 7 things for the day, and number 2 kicks on me. That person is 15 minutes late. That person's an hour late. The doctor can't see us for this period of time. The doctor needs to move the appointment to here. If I'm focused on specifics. If my priorities are where they need to be, I look at my list of things I need to do today. I go, number 5 is not that important. It's important enough for us to think about it, but it's not that big a deal. I got an idea. Let's jettison number 5. And this is freaky. If you actually get this working in your life, the first time it happens, it's going to freak you out. When you and your spouse are on the same page with your priorities and you know clearly, so clearly, what needs to be done, you don't even check in before you make the decision. Because you both know what the priorities are. So when this one tanks on you, number 5, we've already agreed, number 5's not that big a deal. Let's kick that one. And then you text your spouse and just say, couldn't go to this because of this. No discussion, no argument, no debating which specific I'm supposed to follow. You know where really this could be helpful for a lot of you? When you're in a family where you've got the split parents, where you got the kids that got mom lives here, dad lives here. And I know I talk to a lot of you about those kind of things because what you do a lot, and there's a lot of fighting, is anybody here have an ex that you've occasionally fought with? Yeah. You know why you do a lot of the fighting? You're discussing specifics and not priorities. Saying, well, I think they should turn off the screen at 9 o'clock, and you think they should turn it off at 7 o'clock. The problem is you're not talking about the priorities, because this is freaky. Even if you are a devout follower of Christ and your ex is somebody who doesn't have anything to do with God, you still agree on most of the priorities when it comes to your kids. And unless your spouse is just wackadoodle crazy, and some of you got that, but unless they're just absolutely insane at some weird medicine-inducing level, you have to take the medicine, not them. They agree on the priorities. What are your priorities? Well, I don't want my kid to be a drug addict. Right? I want my kid to be a productive adult. I don't want my kid to waste all their time. I want my kid to learn and get a good education. The primary priorities you have for your child, you share with your ex-spouse and your non-ex-spouse at a really deep level, as long as neither of you is crazy. Right? So if you start the conversation, let's just rewind. You're getting ready to talk to your ex about screen time with your kids, how much time they should spend on screens. And you start with, I think an hour is good. I think 3 hours is fine. I think that, what if you start priorities? Okay, how can we work together to make sure our kid doesn't turn out to be a psychopath? We all agree on that, right? So if you go to priorities, you get productive discussions, and you get less stress because, like I said, when push comes to shove, even with the still married spouses, you've already agreed on the priorities. My wife and I are big on, we have the same priorities, so when something comes up, we know what we're supposed to kick. We can't do this today because this is happening, and this is more important. Okay, ready? That's the first one. You're trying to balance in chaos instead of just focusing on your priorities and making those in-the-moment decisions that you know you're going to have to make, right? You're going to have to make in-the-moment decisions tomorrow. If you've agreed on the priorities, those decisions become much, much easier. Okay? Second thing, let's talk about these folks for just a second, because they're doing something wrong, right? What are they doing wrong? You're forgetting when and where you are. You're forgetting when and where you are. Let me put it a different way. Success requires recognizing your season and situation. Your season and your situation. We read this earlier when we read the entire thing out of Ecclesiastes. For everything there is a season, a time for every activity under heaven. Everything has its season, and life has seasons and situations. And let me give you a situation, because a lot of you guys, this is a heavy one. A lot of you guys don't want to deal with situations, because I know we've got such a huge, we got people from all kinds of things. And a lot of you have an issue that you don't want to admit. Like there are people who have PTSD, and you want to see if you can just pretend it's not there and see if it goes away. And one of the things I've learned the hard way in life is ignoring problems. How often does it make them go away? Pretty much never, right? It just gets bigger. Not like a fish. You ignore a fish, it goes away. Right? It just goes, all right, just flush the fish, it's going away. That's what happens to ignore a fish. Ignore a problem, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And a lot of people in our community especially have issues that they need to deal with, and that's part of their situation. And not recognizing your situation, that adds stress. But more in line with what we're talking about today, more specifically, I need most of you parents who have a kid still living at home or one or more kids at home, I need you to do something. I have a very specific homework assignment for you. What I want you to do is I want you to go home and I want you to locate all of your children's birth certificates. Okay? Every birth certificate for each of your children, and I want you to lay them out on a table. And then I want you to take a piece of paper and I want you to write down physically their birth date, including the year, month, day, and year. Okay? And then above each of those, I want you to write the current date. Okay, I want you to write, November 20, whatever it is now, 2019. And then I want you to subtract their birth date from today's date. You with me so far? Now, what's that going to give you? Their age. You know what it's really going to give you? their actual age, not the age you want to pretend your children are. Okay? Because you guys go in two directions when it comes to your children's ages. There are some of you, okay, well, you don't know my child. My child is so advanced. And you don't, so, you know, I know that chronologically my child is 7, but they're more like 13. Your child's 7. They think like a 7-year-old, they act like a 7-year-old, they respond like a 7-year-old, and you pretending like you're something special because your kid's special and they're actually a 20. They're not, they're 7. Treat them like they're 7. You're not living in the season your child is actually in. And so when you treat your 7-year-old like a 13-year-old, you're messing everything up. But, I offended some of you, let me go ahead and offend the other half. Your 12-year-old isn't 7. Okay, you got two groups of parents. Those of you who laughed at the first one, you're about to be offended at the second. And those of you who are offended at the first, you're about to laugh at the second. Okay, you ready? Because some of you think that you don't understand, because my 12-year-old, she's just not been exposed to that much. She doesn't know what's really going on. So, so I know that technically she's 12, but I understand, and a lot of you have this one. This is, the first was for the unprotective. This is for the overprotective parents. Your 12-year-old knows things at 12 that you never dreamed of knowing when you were 12. Okay? They are so far beyond what you knew when you were that age because of that whole internet thing. You may have heard of it. It's all the rage now. And what their friends know and what everybody else knows. And so they know a lot. So pretending like your 12-year-old or your 15-year-old or your 17-year-old isn't as advanced as they are, that's missing the season. You're going to make really bad decisions about your child if you pretend they're younger than they are. Because here's your job. Now this is, everybody, you need to have goals. Everybody needs to have goals. Everybody have goals for your children? Have goals of what you want for your children. One of mine and my wife, we've talked about this a bunch. One of our primary goals for our children is we do not want them living with us forever. That is a major goal in our lives, is to have that point where there is a guest bedroom and they're welcome for up to 3 days at a time. 2.5, 3, something in that area. Okay? Because our job, our goal, our focus, our purpose, our dream, our calling is to have no kids living in our house. Okay? That's the goal. That's the goal. And the only way that happens is if we allow and encourage them to grow up. And to do that, you have to acknowledge the age your child is, the season they are in, and delegate how you treat them based on their real age, not the age you wish they were. That make sense? You know what else plays into this? Your season. Where are you at in life? Because some of you have this idea that your life doesn't have seasons anymore because you're a grown-up. Life has seasons. Where are you at? Where are your kids at? It impacts everything. Some of you think, oh, I can keep everything balanced. No, you can't. I can make everything fit easily. No, you can't. Oh, you do know that like when a child is between, say, 0 and 6 months, that's a slightly different experience than when the child is between 14 and 15 years old. That's a subtly different experience, right? That 0 to 6 months, that's like 24/7 parent, right? You're on call all the time because the kid can only do 3 things and you're responsible for all of them. Right? What? Eat, poop, sleep, right? That's it. And you're either feeding them, changing them, or putting them to sleep and praying they don't wake up for long enough for you to get a nap, right? That's that stage of life. That's where that is, and that's where you are. And you say, well, it's not going to affect me. I'm going to finish 3 college degrees while my child is in the next 6 months of life. Good for you. We'll laugh at you when you're done. Because we know that's not how it works. And you have to recognize, what season am I in? There are seasons in your life where your job's going to take more time than it does other seasons in your life. There are seasons where you're going to be just totally consumed with your job. Sometimes your family's going to consume you. Sometimes other things are going to consume you. And you need to recognize that I can't just stay in the same mode. Some of you are frustrated because your kids are now a little bit older and you have to take care of them differently, and you want it to go back to them being the 7-year-olds, not the ones you have to run around to practices all the time. Or you're upset because your life has changed and your kid doesn't want to be on your lap all the time anymore. Okay, reference that one back to the "I don't want him in my basement" line, okay? So, I got to recognize my season and my situation. And then, finally, my favorite picture, which, ahead of time, this is the one that is the biggest problem for almost every human being that I know. And it's this guy. Because he is missing a key point of physics, right? And so is almost every other person that I know. Because here's the thing he's doing wrong, and you're doing wrong. You're pretending time is flexible and expandable. You honestly think, you believe, and here you're going to argue with me again, you think you can stuff 26 hours worth of stuff into a 24-hour day. Can I give you a number? 168. What 168 is? That's how many hours you have in a week. Do you know how many hours Adam had in a week? Do you know how many hours Abraham had in a week? Another biblical character. You know how many hours Abraham Lincoln had in a week? You know how many hours you have in a week? You didn't want to repeat that, did you? Oh, not me. No, let's look at this. Time constraints are absolute. But Steve, you don't understand my life. You don't know what I've got to try to squeeze into a week. You don't know. 168. But Steve, you don't understand what it's like to raise teens now. You don't know what it's like to balance a job and a schooling. And that's what you got. If you don't recognize that, you're this guy. And almost everybody I know seems to think that if they just maneuver it right, if they just find the right angle, they can get 200 hours worth of stuff into a 168-hour week, and let's make it a little worse, you're sleeping a third of that 168. It ain't moving. And you're saying, but Steve, you don't understand. It's not that I don't understand. It's that you're in denial. You're pretending like somehow you can maneuver time in such a way that you can get more done in a week than you can. It doesn't work that way, and there's the reason. Okay? Here's how Paul says it. Pay careful attention then to how you live, not as unwise people, but as wise, making the most of the time. Making the most of your 168, because the days are evil. Now, a lot of times you might want to take that, because the days are evil, and there is a certain evilness in the days around us, but you know what a lot of it is, too, I think, for me? Days are just evil. Days just, you noticed, you attack a day attacks right back. You say, I'm going to challenge this day, I'm going to accomplish a lot this day is my day, and the day says, no, it's not. And it just starts going, think. Half the time, my schedule for the day doesn't make it out of me getting out of bed. Because something's not going to cooperate. You know, one of the kids is not going to cooperate, an event's not going to because the days are evil. I don't think it's what he meant, but it's still true. Okay? And I'm going to step all over your toes, and you're going to thank me for it. Probably. Because anybody in here stressed about time? Anybody looking at this week and you go, oh, Steve, don't make me think about this week. I have so much to do. Steve, I am so stressed about the time for this coming week. I don't know how I'm going to get everything done that I need to get done. Stress isn't the result of not having enough time. Why? That's why. Stress is not the result of not having enough time. Stress is the result of saying yes to too many things. You don't like that, do you? Sorry. Here's the thing about physics and laws of nature. They never ask if you're okay with them or not. Gravity never says, are you okay with me pulling you down all the time? You're okay with me making you drop things? Are you okay? Law of gravity, God didn't set it up so you could vote on it. Okay? You got absolutely no say in any physical law, including that one. No say whatsoever. There are 168 hours in your week. You're going to sleep a third of them. And you have to learn this really important. This is one of my favorite principles when it comes to life. And you're going to love it. You have to pick your own nose. You'll get it. You have to pick your own nose because basically there is hardly anybody out there who's going to help you pick them for you. Because almost everyone you know is a time telemarketer. They want some of your time. If you're not careful, I can be a time telemarketer for you. Because God loves you and I have a wonderful plan for your life. And I got all kinds of cool things that you can do. And I got great ideas for your life. And if I don't, there's another staff member or another leader in our church who has wonderful plans for your life. And while I believe in your priorities that there's parts of that you need to have that living for God and living as part of His church is very important. Everybody's a time telemarketer. Everybody. Your kids are time telemarketers. Hey, I need this much. Everybody wants your time. And the only way you control your time, the only way you get your time under control is to say that magic word, no. Okay? Are you stressed? I want to take what little bit of time we got left. I want to walk you through 4 steps to de-stress yourself when it comes to handling your life. Okay? You ready? 4 steps to decrease your stress. We've already talked about them. Set your priorities. I think, remember Jesus said it? Seek first His kingdom, His righteousness. Put that number 1. And then what did He say? Seek first His kingdom and His righteousness, and all these things will be added to you as well. In other words, when you set your time priorities, when you set your priorities, God makes your life better. Another place in the Proverbs, He says, God makes your life straight. I love that. Okay? When you seek God first, He makes your life straighter. Anybody's life crooked? Yeah, it's all convoluted and crooked and crazy. Set your priorities. Put God at number 1. Seek first His kingdom, His righteousness. He'll add all these things. He'll make your life straight. He'll make things go better than they would if you didn't. And set your priorities. If you're married, talk to your spouse and agree on your priorities. These things are important. Okay? Next, as we also already said, own your season. Recognize where you are in life and how time has to work within that stage of life. Okay? Like I said, if you've got a 0 to 6 month old, that's your life. Okay? But own your season of life. Own your kid's season. Own the season for those around you. And then here's the deal. Budget your time. Budget your time. See, you're already doing this with money, I hope. I'm going to talk more about money next week. But I'm hoping that you're already saying, you know what? Let's set my priorities. What are my priorities? One of my number one priorities for me personally is having a roof over my head. That's a really high priority. So, and I recognize my season. My season is I need a place to live. So I budget my money by saying that's a really high priority, so I'm going to make sure that I pay my mortgage or my rent first, or second, in my case, second, because my number one priority is what? Is God. So my number one priority is I give a significant percentage of my money to God. In my case, it's a little over 10%. And I give that first because God's my number one priority. So I budget. Say God gets his part. I pay my rent. I make sure I got food. I make sure my car payments are made. I make sure And down toward the bottom, there's the stuff that aren't nearly as important. Like if I come to the end of the week or the month and I don't have a lot of money, then today after church, I'm not going to that restaurant. I may be eating ramen at home. Right? Because that's just not as important. And so I'm prioritizing my time already. That's what I do with my money. Now I just bring that over and I stick it on my schedule. What's important? God's number one. I'm going to try to prioritize my life around God and his principles and what he wants in my life. And I'm going to work my way down. And that enables me to say no to this stuff that's at the bottom. Because why? Because nobody's going to pick your nose for you. Right? Right? Nobody's going to do that for you. You have to pick your own nose. It is a very rare person that will pick a nose for you. Right? Matter of fact, we did run into one recently. It was just amazing. My daughter and her husband and my grandson, he's in kindergarten, and it was time for teacher meetings. You got to go meet with the teacher. And the teacher messaged my daughter and said, you know, we've already told, TJ's a really good student. I've already told you everything you need to know about TJ. Why don't you just not come in? She actually chose to give them back time, but you're not going to find very many people like that. Your kids are going to grab time. The people who know your kids are going to grab time. Everybody around you is going to try to grab some of your time, and you have to have your priorities straight so that you can look and say, no. As the kids get older, that gets harder because they want bigger things that take more time. You say, what's the word again? No. And you have to learn to say no so that you can set your priorities, own your season, and budget your time. Because if you don't have your finances under control, what does that create in your life? Stress. If you don't have your time under control, what does that create in your life? Stress. And this is a very godly principle, a very biblical principle most people don't talk about. Build in margin. I say it's biblical. Here's why it's biblical. God gave us 10 commandments. We've heard of those, right? You know what one of the 10 commandments is? Honor the Sabbath to keep it holy. What's that mean? You ever thought about that? You ever thought that one through? Give back to God one day of your week. What? Yeah, take one day a week and do nothing that is productive from a work standpoint. Well, Steve, that's not possible. Yeah, God always telling us to do impossible things like love our neighbors. No, he says, give me back a day. I was having this because everybody has trouble with this. I was having this conversation with the staff just a few weeks ago, and a couple of them were kind of bucking on me about it. I said, no, we can't count Sunday as our day off. I can't count Sunday as a Sabbath because this is what I do for a living right here. Okay, so for me to call Sunday my day off is just silly. My day off is Friday. And when I go to bed on Friday till I go to bed on Thursday night till I get up on, till I get up. Anyway, all day Friday. I do this for a living somehow. That's my day off. Now, some things come up and people unknowingly interrupt me and I might reply real quickly, but I'm not going to work on Friday. I have a list of things to get done on Thursday night. I get all those things done before I go to bed so that Friday's clear for me. And I'm talking to a couple of staff people. I'm like, yeah, you need to do that. And they're kicking back a little bit. And I said, no, you need to do this. And then the next week we had staff meeting and we brought it up again. And they'd both done it. And we're like, that was so wonderful. Because God instructs us to put margin into our lives when it comes to our money. We call that the tithe, giving back to God. Gives a little margin, teaches you your money's not the driver of your life, and give me back that day of the week. That's called Sabbath, which means time's not driving my life, I'm driving my time. And when you do these things, I can speak from experience, this is a much less stressful life than a lot of you are living right now. You're carrying stress that you shouldn't be carrying. Because you're saying yes to everything and you're trying to do, what's that again? That with your time. And it's not working and you're frustrated and you're sniping with your spouse because somehow they're supposed to be able to magically make some more time for you when the reality is that. Is that clear? It's hard. I admit it's hard. Our world is constructed in such a way that makes it very, very difficult. But if you want less stress in your life, you learn to say no. You'll prioritize things so you know what to say no to. You recognize the season of life that you're in so that you know that needs to be said no to now. And you intentionally budget your time. Make sense? Now, like I've said a few times, the best starting point for this is to prioritize God number one, because that makes your path straight. Okay? If you're here today and you're a follower of Christ, that's the first thing you need to do. Look at your times, look at how you spend your time, look at your calendar, look at your bank statement, and ask myself, am I making God number one? If you're not, my challenge is to start moving in that direction, because that'll make your path straighter, okay, by itself. Okay? If you're not a follower of Christ, let me just say, this may sound crazy, putting God first and taking a week off, a day off a week and all that stuff. Well, I have this thing about trusting God because anybody who sends their son to die for me, I trust them. Make sense? There's some ways you can earn trust. And somebody sending their son to die for me so I can spend forever with that person. I have a relationship starting now, extending into eternity with that person. I'm going to trust that person, and God did that. God sent his son to die to take away all the penalties of my sin so I could be reconciled to God. And if you would like to have a relationship with a God who loves you enough to do that even the way you're acting right now, the way I'm acting right now, what we do is we make it really simple. If you'd like to talk to someone about having a relationship with Christ, all we ask you to do is pick up one of these blue bags. We have some on the sides of the stage. We have some back there on the tables. And if you grab a blue bag, we've got some people that are trained. They'll take about 10 minutes. They'll unpack the bag with you, walk you through the contents, and show you how to have that relationship with Christ. We have people almost every week who say, it's time for me to have a relationship with Christ, and they grab a blue bag. So that's all you got to do. Grab a blue bag after the service or during this next song. If you have been baptized, you have the relationship with Christ, the Bible says the next thing you're supposed to do is to be baptized to announce to everybody that you have that relationship with Christ. And so we do baptisms the first Wednesday of every month. That's coming up in just a week and a half. Just let us know. It's baptism@spoutsprings.org. We'll get in touch with you. We'll make sure you're ready, and we'll take care of that for you. Okay? It may be that you're ready to start making steps to becoming the person God created you to be. We have our step classes for that. Step 1 class is always the first Sunday of every month, which is next week, and it's at 6 o'clock in Steel Fortress. I teach that class, and we talk about how this church is designed to help people come to a relationship with Christ and grow into all God designed them to be. So if you haven't taken that class, you just show up. Child care is provided. It's a pretty good hour. I take an hour, and we have a good time. Now, it could be, as I was talking, that there's something that God's kind of moving in your life about, and you'd like to pray about it during this next song, just get up and go over to that cross over there. That's there so that during this song, you can just pray about whatever you want to pray about. It could be something that's totally unrelated to the sermon, or it could be about what God worked in your life for the sermon. Either way, you can go where you can stand, you can kneel, whatever. If you want to pray with somebody, we've got a couple people lined up on the outside of the auditorium who'd love to pray with you. Also, if you want to get a blue bag, you can grab a blue bag during the song and take it to them, and they'll unpack it with you. It could be you'd like to take communion. We've got a communion station, one in the back, one in the front, for you to just acknowledge what God's done for you and in your life. I know I hit you hard today. I know it sounds easy when I get up here and I say, yeah, prioritize your time and get everything right, and you're going to go out and the world's going to make it really, really hard for you. I understand that. It's worth the work. But just to give you a little bit of a head start, how about I close by praying for you? Father, I thank you that you have given us 168 hours a week. Father, I thank you that you gave it to us knowing it's enough. That your gifts are good gifts and you didn't give us too little time. So Father, this week, help me to prioritize. Help me to recognize where I am, what season of life I am, what my situation is. And help me to take the time to budget my time. Maybe to make some hard decisions about what I need to say no to. Maybe to move some things up on my yes list so that I'm reflecting your principles more clearly. And Father, for me and for everyone in this room, give us the strength to say yes to the right things, no to the wrong things, even if they're kind of good things, but they're still wrong for us right now. And help us to say enough no's to where we have some margin in our lives so we can have a lot less stress and live in the joy that you want us to live in. In Jesus' name.